Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha. We shall start with our petition, prayer. Psalm 1. Happy is a man that does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the halakha of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his desire is in the Torah of Yahoshua, and in Torah he meditates in the days and night. And he shall be like a net planted by the rivers of Mayim, that brings forth his fruit in its season, and whose leaves also shall not wither, and whatsoever he does, he shall prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahoshua knows the halakha of the righteous, but the halakha of the wicked shall perish. Psalm 4. Hear me when I call, O Elohim of my righteousness. You have enlarged me when I was in distress. Have loving kindness upon me, and hear my prayer. O you sons of men, how long will you turn my respect into shame? How long will you love worthlessness and run after what is deceptive? Selah. But know that Yahoshua has separated him that is merciful for himself. Yahoshua will hear when I call to him. Stand in awe and do no sin. Meditate when you lie on your bed, and hold your shalom. Selah. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness, and put your trust in Yahoshua. There be many that say, who will show us any good? Yahoshua, lift up the light of your countenance upon us. You have put gladness in my heart more than in the time that their grain and their wine increased. I will both lay down in shalom and sleep. For you, Yahoshua, only make me to dwell in safety. Psalm 133. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard that went down to the edge of his robe, as a dew of Hermon, and as a dew that descended upon the mountains of Sion. For there Yahoshua commanded the blessing and life forevermore. We come before you, Abba. We thank you for this wonderful time, during the Passover, as a memorial to remember the exodus of our people, when you took us out of Egypt, out of bondage and out of slavery, and you set us free. So one thing is established, that we were made free by your right hand, the right hand of power. We thank you, Father, for the times when you took our forefathers from Egypt and brought them out, and you brought them into a good land that was full of milk and honey. We thank you for that generation and subsequent generations. And we come before you for apologies and regretfulness and sorrow that those people that did not listen to you, those that perished on the way, and those that perished later. And so, Father, we pray for forgiveness for those people, and we pray for those that were faithful and steadfast, for blessings to be bestowed upon them forever and ever, to their future generations, to the generations that have persisted, to the generations that are alive today, that are living by your word, that you bless them and you keep them safe. I thank you, Father, for your mercies, for your tender mercies upon your people, upon the whole house of Israel. And I petition to you, Father, at this time to remember us in the diaspora, as we are in the four corners of the earth, that your promises were given, that you would restore us back to our land and to our people. That you may remember it, that you may bring us together one day in the near future, that we may reestablish our service back to you, to Da, and thank you. May your name be forever praised. Thank you, thank you. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so this is the week of the Passover, for those of you that are able to do it. And generally speaking, we don't normally do a Parsha during the Passover, generally speaking. So, we can speak about various things to do with the Torah and general life. I wanted to first of all brief you on the economic or the situation where we are presently, because I think it affects us all. The economic situation that you're in, and myself included, it affects us all collectively, and how we move forward, and how we can use this time for a blessing, or if you're not, then it can become a curse for those who don't know how. So let me first of all give you what's happening on the world stage. I think it was a couple of days ago that there was a block of nations known as the OPEC Plus, which includes Saudi Arabia and Russia and some of the other Middle East nations. They decided to cut from oil that they drill or they supply to the world. They decided to cut by 2 million barrels, and I think it's going to be probably now it's going to be reduced down to 1.5 million barrels. Now what that did, that sent shockwaves in the market. It did cause the dollar to tumble a little. It also caused some of the other market participants to suffer losses. Now that move was unexpected, because it hasn't happened like that for a while. Now why is that move problematic? Well, let me tell you why it's problematic. First of all, we had a number of banks that failed in America: Signature Bank, SVB, and also also Credit Suisse, busted itself, and then it was bought out in pennies by UBS. Why is it problematic? Because as soon as that happened, oil prices jumped up, boom, to $80 a barrel and above. So what happens is that high oil prices will affect everything that we do in this life. It affects everything, affects every product, because every product's delivery is based on fuel, and fuel coming to, fuel used to bring truckloads of food, products, services, whatever, to our nation, to our cities. So if oil prices are high, it means that it cannot allow inflation to go down. It will cause it to go up. Second thing that the banks did, not the banks, the FOMC here in the US, is that they started to raise interest rates aggressively. Similar thing happened in the UK. Interest rates went up aggressively. Almost every other nation followed suit. And the result of that was we had a number of banks that started to fail, because the interest rates went up, and the instruments that they had loaned, they were getting less money on them than they had to pay back, because suddenly interest rate rose way above standard. And so now the Federal Reserve has to do QE, quantitative easing, push money into the markets for liquidity. If they don't, then it can cause the whole thing to collapse. Okay? Now, how does the oil price affect everybody? The eggs you buy on the shelf, you might be like, I don't have a car and I don't care, and I don't drive a car, I drive a bicycle. Sure, you can drive a bicycle, but when you go to buy your eggs and your bread in Tesco and in Walmart and in Target, in Sainsbury's, you're going to find, or in Carrefour, you're going to find that you have to pay more money, even for eggs, for milk, for bread, basic items. So therefore, it also is going to cause inflation to be stubborn, because energy prices are high. Therefore, it will affect everything: car prices, home prices, land prices, clothes prices, everything will be affected. It's not a great idea for this to happen. Now, it also means that Saudi Arabia has dislocated itself from the U.S. policy. The U.S. policy is for them to produce more oil so prices can come down. Now, the U.S. stupidly, I should say, not intelligently, stupidly, our present government in the US has actually incorrectly has stopped a lot of the production of oil and gas. That is a bad idea, because we actually in the US are self-sufficient in oil and gas. We have more than Saudi Arabia ever has. We have more oil and more gas than Saudi Arabia. And if we were to produce our oil and gas, then that would mean that we would actually have no problem. We'll be shipping out to the world. We will keep the oil prices low. And so Saudi Arabia, Russia, and other nations could not push the price of oil up. Now, here's a problem. Mr. Biden, the president, for whatever reason, decided to shut down the XL pipeline. He also shut down a lot of the oil production. Why? Because he thought, carbon print in the air, it's going to increase bad weather. Now, here's the problem. Here is how I see this as short-sighted. I see this as short-sighted because Saudi Arabia doesn't care about the planet. Russia doesn't care about the planet. How come they can keep pumping smoke into the air and the US has to decide not to? So even if the US doesn't, what, does Saudi Arabia live on a different planet, or does Russia live on a different planet? Or what about China? Do they live on a different planet? They are smoking the environment. Have you ever been to Beijing? Have you ever gone to China? If you haven't, you really need to go there and look, because the worst smog you will see in China, I've been there, I've seen it. Worst smog you will see in China, always. Heavy pollution in the air. Why? Because Chinese factories, they're dumping waste in the rivers and they're dumping waste in the air. Their carbon footprint. So even though we in the US might say, okay, we will do our part, we won't do it, but somebody else in other side of the world is. So our not doing it doesn't help, because the amount that we would have done, they've already done twice, 3 times more, because we will have some controls in the US not to do as much, but they have no controls. So therefore, I think it's very short-sighted for our government in the US not to produce lots and lots of oil, because our reserves are low in America. They should replenish the reserves and they should produce the oil and they should sell it to the world. And then that will cause the oil prices to come down. It will cause inflation to come down. It will also mean that no longer have to put interest rates up. Interest rates will actually go down. Everybody's life will be easier. We will have a beautiful environment with rising employment, rising economic activity, and everybody will be happy all over the world, not just in the US, all over the world, because we lead the way. We lead the way and everybody follows. See, when we started to raise interest rate, everybody followed. If we start to drop interest rate, everybody will follow. We now just put a pause on, because we realize that if we don't, we're going to crash our banks. And that's going to affect millions of people. Maybe not millions, but it will affect some people, especially the rich class who invested in bonds, T-bonds and all those kind of products. It already did. It already did affect some families, and it will probably affect some more. So we cannot take these chances. We cannot do that, because I'm telling you, raising interest rates is a sure way to go to hell on this planet. It really is, because that is not a good model. I've already said it in my last lecture, and I'll say it again. Raising interest rates is not the way to control inflation. Inflation starts with energy prices. So what do we need to control to control inflation? Energy prices. And you know what? They don't count energy prices into the inflation equation, so their model is stupid anyway. It's broke. It's a broke model. The model is broke, and the model cannot be fixed with the present way they calculate it. Now, America. President Trump, ex-President Trump, was indicted in New York, and he's gone to court, and they're trying to put charges on him and things like that of that nature. All of that, I personally see that as just political maneuvers, just to pressure Mr. Trump for whatever reason, political reasons. Now, here is what I see, and here is what I foresee. Mr. Trump is very popular as an ex-president. As an ex-president, he's very popular. He's a very popular candidate for the elections coming up. So, I personally do favor Mr. Trump coming into power. Why? Because, or somebody similar. Why I say that is because, especially Mr. Trump, why? Because he will have the right policy for the energy, and he will not allow people like Jerome Powell to continue to, raise interest rates. Mr. Trump had a huge problem with Jerome Powell during his presidency of similar nature of trying to raise rates. He had similar problem with him back then as well. So they weren't the best of friends. And I don't think they'll be the best of friends now, because if he came into power, Jerome Powell will be, he'll be leashed, I can tell you that. And energy prices will be leashed. Why? Because Mr. Trump's going to allow oil and gas to be produced in America, and we're going to bring the prices down. So I do think that somebody like him or similar needs to come into power to rein in American, American wrong policies. So that's where we are now. Saudi Arabia, China, Brazil, Russia, blah, 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 the rest of the countries with them. They're forming their own bloc, and they're trying to derail the dollar against their national currencies, yuan, ruble, and all the other rest. Let me say this, the dollars had dominance for decades, and a lot of people are talking about the dollar going down. Excuse me, and a lot of people are saying that the dollar will go down or lose its dominance, and therefore some other currency will take over. I say no, that will not happen anywhere in the near future, by the way. And I'm talking about the near future being 5, 10 years, decade. Forget about it. You could just forget about it. You are naive if you think that UN can take over the dollar. You're very naive if you think that. You're very naive if you think ruble can take over the dollar. It will never happen. Listen, America is a powerful nation. It's a blessed nation. Okay? And you know the reasons why it's blessed. I don't need to spell it out. So, we, as a blessed nation of God, we will not lose the dollar dominance anytime soon. So don't worry about it. We will always have the dominance for a very long time. And I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm talking about next 50 years we will have dominance. China will not succeed. Okay, China is a threat to our national economy, to our dollar. China will not succeed. I can tell you right over here. It doesn't matter what China does. Even Russia will not succeed. Even though Russia, has its reasons for the war in Ukraine, I don't want to get into that. That's a separate topic. But I'm just talking about the dollar dominance. I do not think the ruble will take over the dollar or UN will. UN has no power against the dollar. Saudi Arabia's policies, they have just made policy. China did a peace agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Okay, they become friends for now. For now. But let me tell you what the Bible says. I don't want to read out all those prophecies. I've written books on those. China did the friendship thing, okay? But Saudi Arabia and Iran are sworn enemies. They have now opened their embassies and put ambassadors in place. But let me tell you, yeah, it all looks rosy, but how long will it last? Okay, so keep watching this space. When you're a sworn enemy, there's only one mistake, and then after that you go back to status quo, being enemies again. So I do not see this as a lasting relationship, considering that we do know that the Bible speaks about a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So how will that war come if they're going to be friends? It's not going to last, okay? And you will see the result of that yourself. Now, moving on, like I said, that this relationship, it's good to have peace. I'm not against peace. It's great. It's great to have peace, and it'd be nice for Ukraine and Russia to also settle their differences in peace, because it's affecting everybody. Technically, again, it's affecting everybody. Both are grain producing nations. Russia has fertilizer, has all the lumber, timber in the world to produce houses. Ukraine has corn and has wheat, ample amounts, flat lands. So I think it's a good idea for them to come to peace. But right now, our own governments, our own governors, FOMC, Mr. Chairman Powell, England has Mr. Bailey, and France has their own, and so on and so forth. These people are only destroying the economies. Okay, all these people, through their misguided policies, are actually destroying the economy, not building it. Have you seen how many people have been put out of work lately? How many people have lost their job? How many companies are shut down? How three banks collapsed, and there are some other banks on the verge of collapse, and maybe they will appear in the next few weeks as well, or next few months. Some banks are struggling, but they're hiding their errors in their books. So we're not in a good place right now with this interest rate policy. It's very, very damaging. Interest rates. Here is my. I'll tell you what will happen. Interest rates are going to be coming down this year. They've gone up far enough. Interest rates will actually start to push back. There's going to be an immediate pause in the summer on interest rates, especially in the US. And then we're going to see interest rate cut in the fall. So let's see where this goes. Because if we don't do that, America, the American government doesn't rein in Mr. Powell, we're going to have a lot of problems with employment, factories shutting down, workers laid off, and banks collapsing. In order to stop those things, interest rate has to stop rising, put a pause on it, and then start decreasing. So we should start to see decreases of interest rates down the year. So look forward to that. So that's basically the scenario. What's going on so far is that there seems to be this economic pact on the east side, and there's an economic pact in the west. However, because we have the balance of power in the west, I do not think that the east will win that balance of power. Although they're trying to gain the balance of power, but unfortunately it's not going to work. Okay, it's nice, it's all looks good, but it's not going to work, and there are a number of reasons for that. I don't think that I need to go through why, but all I can tell you is that it's not going to work. These policies that our leaders are making presently, they are not helpful in the least to our people, of America or the other nations that deal with America in terms of business and what not. This is why I think that it all looks very rosy, but it's actually not that rosy. Okay. Now, the Parsha this week would be Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, chapters 12, which talks about leprosy. Okay. Let me see if I can open the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls, and we can get a little glimpse of what is going on with this leprosy thing, skin disorder, skin disease. Okay, give me a second. Let me open the Parshas, and that will be Let's go there. Tazria. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1. Here we are. And Yahoshua spoke to Moses, Musa, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a woman has conceived and given birth to a child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. According to the days of the separation of her infirmity shall she be unclean, and in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. Okay, by the way, this is not history. This is present day as well. All the people who are under the umbrella of Torah, they still circumcise their sons, which is commanded on the 8th day. They can do it earlier. They can do it earlier than 8 days, and maximum 8 days. Unless the child is ill, unless the child is born sick, then he can wait longer. And it says that the woman who gives birth, she shall be, it talks about the uncleanness of that woman. It says that she will be unclean 7 days, according to the separation, and then it talks about the circumcision, and then the woman will continue in the uncleanness for another 33 days. She shall touch no holy thing, nor come into the sanctuary. When the temple was standing, was not allowed to come in until the days of her purifying. And of course, there was there was a requirement of her. If she bore a girl, then they will give her certain types of offerings. For the girl it was 66 days of being impure, double the time of the boy. And then it says when they will come to the temple, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a son. It says after the purifying she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering. So she was supposed to give a burnt offering her husband, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove. So a pigeon, turtle dove for a sin offering to the door of the tent at the appointed times for the Kohen. That means today as well. That means, you might say, there's no temple. Sure, yeah, there's no temple, but there is a priesthood. Priesthood still stands. We are still living. The sons of Aaron are still alive and well in various parts of the world. So therefore, if you go to your Kohen and you make the equivalent offering in money, who shall offer it before Yahoshua and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is instruction for her that has borne a male or a female. And if she will not be able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves. So if somebody can't afford to bring a lamb, lamb these days, the price of the lamb, I don't need to tell you. And then it says they can bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for the burnt offering and the other for the sin offering, and the Kohen shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean. So that was for her impurity. She was supposed to do that, and this is to do with the offering for a male or female, for a boy or a girl. Okay, girl, by the way, girls did not need to and do not need to be circumcised, although some cultures do. Ours doesn't. Okay, and then it talks about chapter 13, and Yahoshua spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and saying, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it will be in the skin of his flesh like the disease of leprosy, then it shall be brought to Aaron, the Kohen, or to one of his sons, the Kohanim. So what does this tell us? Okay, what does this tell us? This tells us this. If you have any kind of skin disorder, you bring it to the Kohen, he checks it, he tells you what to do, the do's and the don'ts. Okay, just like the Passover. Here's an example. What else does it tell you? It tells you that we have special immunity. We, the priesthood, have immunity to the plague, to diseases like the plague, to pandemics and things like that. Okay, including coronavirus. Yeah, coronavirus as well. I will never get coronavirus. Never. I will never get the plague. Never. It'll never be. Okay, it never happened. It never will. Never will happen in the future. So, why? Because we are immune to these diseases. I'm immune to a lot of diseases without taking vaccine shots and this, that, and the third. I don't need any of these vaccines. I'm already immune to it. My whole family is immune to it. Did you know that in the pandemic, from the time it started in 2020 to present time, even my family members that did not adhere to the Torah, although they are still connected, they're still, part of the same household of God, although they may not be keeping the commandments, other than myself, even they, the weakest person of my family, and I'm talking about my brothers and sisters, not anybody else, the weakest members of my family did not get the COVID virus. Okay? Learn from there. We have the Cohen family, direct family. Now, what about the cousins, aunties, and uncles? Well, guess what? They all got their share of the COVID virus because they're not part of our family. They are not bloodline. They were not bloodline from a Levite, so they did get their COVID viruses. Only my family is the only one in our family that none of us got the COVID virus. Okay, why? Because God has protected us. God has given us this everlasting protection. And this only applies to us, my family, the priesthood family. It doesn't apply to anybody else. Okay, what about those people that do not keep the Torah? They're in violation. Sure, God can be upset about it. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but listen, majority of my family is Muslim. You know that. So if they are Muslim, then they keep 70%, 80% of the Torah anyway. So therefore they still, to what they know, they keep adhere to that, and what they don't know, they don't. So I think that, I wouldn't encourage you to go and bully people, to convert them, or try to prove yourself right and them wrong. And the same goes for Christianity. Okay, I wouldn't try to go and debate Christians just to prove them wrong. And sure I can, and sure I did in the past. I did do that in the past, but I wouldn't do it presently. I've stopped doing that a decade ago. Stopped doing that because it's not fruitful. It is not fruitful to be fighting at home with your Christian relatives and trying to prove them wrong, because you're going to become they're going to see you as a troublemaker. And so I encourage you, if you're married, if your spouse is Christian and she wants to go to church, stop fighting her. Stop trying to convert her. Let her go to the church. Let her go, because you're not going to bring peace by fighting her constantly. Love her, show love, show compassion. She doesn't know. She doesn't have the right amount of knowledge. Let her be. Even though we know what the church teaches. It's a lot of deception, lies, mistruths. We know that. There's some truth and the rest is all mistruths. In spite of that, I will say to you that to keep peace in your home, don't, go to the other extreme of fighting and trying to convert her. Don't do that. Since you decided to marry her, your marriage was based on, to what I can understand, was based on love. It wasn't based on her religion at the time. Well, if it wasn't based on her religion, then why try to convert her now? Let her be. But you are in Torah. If you are in Torah, then you, the man, are the head. It is under you that your wife comes and your children come. Doesn't matter what church she belongs to. You, because of you, God has redeemed you, and God has redeemed your family. Did you know that? God has redeemed your family because of you. Your wife, your children are redeemed because of your Torah faithfulness, not because of your wife's faithfulness. Your wife can be faithful, 110% in Torah, but she's not going to redeem you. But you will redeem her, and you will redeem your children, irrespective of what religious background she goes to. As long as she's under your covering, you have already redeemed her. You're already in the covenant. So don't go and fighting and arguing and trying to prove, we do the Passover and we are more superior than you, and you do the Easter and you're less superior, and it's paganism and blah, blah, blah. Don't do any of that. Because all you will do is you'll create problem upon problem. Problems will magnify. Peace will go from your home, and you will not be a happy bunny. Okay? Don't do that. Please. Adhere to Torah. Give thanks to God. And love your wife and your children. So, with that, I'm going to say this ends my lecture. Have a wonderful, wonderful Passover. And until next time, I say to you, Shabbat Shalom.